The genre of our film is a crime film. A few conventions of this genre are action/violence, good versus evil, tense music and fast-paced editing, and a complicated hero. We used all of the conventions listed above. Violence was used as a threat by the killer, and at the end of the opening he ends up killing the police officer. The violence is off screen though. You see the killer holding the gun and it cuts away. Even if you don't directly see the violence, we imply that it happened as you hear a gunshot. There's a good versus evil theme where you clearly have two sides that oppose each other. We seemingly establish someone as our main character. He has a home, an identity, as a police officer, and seems to be troubled. We have him killed off very swiftly, so it's somewhat countertypical of a crime thriller. This is a case of a good character losing, which is a rare occurrence as a whole, and here it shows that evil is winning. For the convention of having a complicated hero, we have a police officer who is conflicted. He's a good person, yet he is experiencing some sort of pain, as indicated by him drinking and looking at himself in disgust. Some movies similar to what we have done in our piece, the Batman films, which have a hero at a low point, and then there's Taken, where there's a phone call with two people in opposition. However, ours was kind of different, as the hero didn't really try to fight back. And then the convention that we broke was lighting. In crime films it's usually dark at night, and due to not having access to good lighting, we couldn't really film at night, so we had to film during the daytime. Our actors were teenagers, but they were supposed to represent adults. We presented them as people with power. The main character was a police officer, and the person who called him was clearly a cause of concern or fear. The only ethnic background we represented were white British, mainly because we didn't have anyone else to act in our film. Like with age, we had them in positions of power. This can be seen as negative, as they come across as a dominant ethnicity. We could have challenged this by having actors of the other ethnicities in our film. They would have been given the exact same roles. The only gender we had was male. Similarly to ethnicity, this really just came down to not having the actors for it, and it really doesn't represent women in positions of power, which is also very negative because it gives a negative representation. But it could potentially make men seem as victims, so that could be a negative representation of that. So they're weak despite having power. Warner Brothers would be the one to distribute our film, as they have experience in distributing superhero and action movies. Some examples of this are the Dark Knight trilogy, with Dark Knight alone having a box office of $1.5 billion, and Man of Steel having a box office of $668 million. This is in dollars. They would be a valuable partner as they are well known, and when people see the name associated with our film, they'll be interested in going to go and see it. It would be something that would be internationally distributed. Warner Brothers would be able to help us do this, as we can reach a larger audience. If we just released it in the UK, that wouldn't be as wise in my opinion, mainly because there are many easy ways of distribution that can reach other audiences. I think it'd be wise to release a film in both cinema and online, via services like Netflix. I think this because cinema can help provide an authentic movie experience, and internet distribution is a growing industry, so if we didn't do this, we could be missing out on a large part of the audience if we don't release it on the internet. It would be marketed with trailers, posters, all that usual stuff. We'd also probably use cross-media convergence with a tie-in app or something to get interest in the film increased. I think our primary target audience is teenagers of both genders. They like a good action movie, so we're going to try to do that and reach out to them. And we're going to go for a comic book feel like Marvel, so they might enjoy it. Then the secondary audience would be 18 to 30-year-olds, as we're going to go for a comic book feel, so it may make the audience feel nostalgic for comics. But we're aiming to make the feel of a movie accessible to everyone. We don't really want to exclude anyone, and the appeal would probably come from the action sequences. It would probably be rated 12A, as many movies like Dark Knight can get away with being gritty and having violent content. So as long as we don't really push any boundaries, we'll be fine. And we don't want to focus on any of the wounds or the blood, and we don't want to glamorize crime, because we don't want to influence someone or affect the age rating. We are attracting our audience by making it for fans for DC and crime or thriller films. The appeal comes with it being mysterious. Who is this police officer? Who killed him? Why was he killed? The questions are left open to intrigue the audience and motivate them to keep watching and find out. The story being left ambiguous is a convention of a crime genre. Usually a crime is committed by an unknown person. The police go to investigate and eventually find the culprit. Well, the way we were going to do it was having a killer masked, almost like V and V for Vendetta, but his character was kind of left open for interpretation, while our character is kind of supposed to be bad. We didn't end up using a mask due to funds, but we ended up challenging the convention of the killer being mysterious, as we do reveal his identity. People from the ages 0 to 10 may not like it due to the violent and mature themes. This may be disturbing to young children, so we'd want to avoid freaking them out. The violence may also be unappealing to an elderly audience of about 70 and above. I've learnt more about the technologies that I used to edit films. We had tried to use Final Cut Pro, but it kept on desyncing the audio from the film. Even though we had tried multiple things to fix this, we eventually had to move to iMovie. We had to cut some parts of the scenes to make it flow better, and the audio balancing was tricky as some scenes were louder than others, but we managed to make it work by going through every other scene and changing the audio levels so that they were equal. I got more used to how the camera is used with setting up. I used WordPress to make blog posts and detail what we have been doing through the development of our film. YouTube was used to actually put our clips up on, then we also learned how to embed clips onto WordPress. And some specific things I learnt with iMovie had to do with cutting clips, modifying audio levels, and adding exterior content such as pictures and a soundtrack. When we began the preliminary task, I had no experience with iMovie, so I had to gradually build up my skills and knowledge over the course of a project. I wish we had access to a better editing program, as we didn't really have access to Final Cut Pro and we could only do minimal things. I would also want better lighting so the light could fit the atmosphere of the movie that we wanted to convey. Since the preliminary task, my knowledge on film production has increased. From audience feedback, I've learned of areas that I can improve in. Camera angles. Just looking back at the preliminary task, we used very basic camera shots like over the shoulder and mid shots. In the main task, we used a larger variety of shots like establishing shots, extreme close-ups, wide shots, etc. Of course, we also used the shots that I had mentioned from the preliminary task. Editing. The only real editing we did in the main task was using Match on Action. We just kind of put the clips together and it didn't flow well at all. We employed more techniques in our final piece. We did things like having a character speaking over the phone, but cutting the scenes being shown between video of the caller and the police officer.
Hello, Jack. I know you're there. I'm so disappointed in you, Jack. We gave you simple instructions to follow, yet you decided to disobey them. Did you think you could just walk away and all be forgiven? We don't forgive. We most certainly do not forget. Which brings me to the point of this call. We're coming for you. I had such high hopes for you, Jack. All very simple. Provide us with lots of information. You would walk away rich. Rest in peace.
Audio. In the preliminary task, we didn't really make use of a soundtrack, and while silence can actually work in some situations, it can also be really boring without it. You can hear background noise, which doesn't sound good at all, as nothing is going on, so your attention is led to that. You could also barely hear what the characters were saying when they went outside, which is a huge issue. In the final piece, we have added music, as we understand it is important as it helps retain the audience's attention. The music we chose fit the tone that we wanted to convey, and the actors can be heard just fine due to audio balancing. Research and planning. We were able to research what our target audience wanted from a movie. We didn't just go ahead, made what we want, and then expected the audience to like it. We asked them what they wanted to see, and then we made something from that feedback. And then, one strength I can think of is we had really strong camera work. We used a variety of shots, and we maintained a steady camera. And then a weakness would be not being able to use Final Cut Pro. We'd have been able to do so much more when it came to editing with it.